Scott O'Neill, Chief Executive of Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. Welcome to Leaders Book Club with Scott O'Neill, the man of the moment. How are you, Scott?
Happy, healthy, and thriving. That's the good news. The New Jersey Devils, our hockey team, just got the number 4 overall pick in the lottery. So that rebuild continues at a really rapid pace. And the Sixers just eliminated the Wizards, and we'll move on to the second round as the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So a very, very good basketball team in the NBA. And I'm joining your book club. I mean, come on now. What could be better than the opportunity to learn and grow?
Not only are you joining the book club, Scott, but you're the inaugural host of the book club. This is going to be a big thing, and it's a big one to start with. We've got a tradition, Scott, whether you know it or not, but we start interviews in a particular way now, where I ask you to remember that the main thing is the main thing. So what is your main thing at the moment?
The main thing at the moment is to appreciate and enjoy the time with my daughters. I have one off at university, one in college, and one in high school. And when I was younger, I used to hear older people say, time goes fast, time goes fast, time goes fast. And I want to make sure that I continue to be where my feet are, appreciate every moment I have with my ladies before they ride off into the sunset.
Very good. Scott, you have selected for the Leaders Book Club today 3 books that you want to talk about. 2 that have provided you with some serious leadership lessons in your own and the development of your own career, and 1 that you're hoping will provide leadership lessons for others. Tell us what those books are.
Sure. 1 is Be Where Your Feet Are.
There you go.
So this is my book that I just wrote, which I'm sure we'll talk about. I love it. It's been a labor of love. Number 2 is The Psychology of Money, which talks about, it's an education and somewhat an elementary education in terms of how you can think about money, invest money, and prepare for your future. And the 3rd is Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Group, which is about treating people like people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where do you want to start, Scott? Should we do chronological order in the order that you read and then wrote them, or backwards?
Let's do it.
Okay. So which one did you read first?
Be Where Your Feet Are.
You're the only person who's read the book they've written before they wrote it.
Leadership and Self-Deception.
Okay. All right.
I first read it when I was out of work, out of luck, and out of money. I had was working for Hoops TV. I was the president of Hoops TV during the internet boom era in the late 90s. And I went internet bust and blew through $15 million, 53 employees, one including my brother and several of my best friends, and found myself literally out of work, out of luck, and out of money. Foreclosure notices on the house, not in the mental state or frame of mind to be looking for a job or even making a phone call, and struggling emotionally, physically, spiritually, etc., intellectually. And my wife handed me this book. I was taking a little road trip to the Midwest, and she said, "You need this one." And interestingly enough, I don't know if you ever sat on a plane next to anybody that cries, but it's not great because you don't know the person. You don't really want to engage. You just want to do your thing. But I was that guy. Mm-hmm. And it kind of set me on a path to rediscover who I was and who I am and who I aspire to be. And since then, I've had the people I work with read the book. It's a wonderful book. It's really simply about treating people like people. And there's several emotional scenes in the book that broke me down to that guy on the plane.
And did you have an aha moment when you were reading it? And if you did, what was it?
I did. There's a moment in the book where a father sends his son off into the mountains of Utah to recenter, and the boy had been a bit troubled and made some mistakes, and he's picking this boy up who had literally lived in the mountains for a month with a group of other boys who were struggling. And as the dad is walking to pick him up, he realizes for the first time that the problem is him and it's not a son. And that was my aha moment. And thinking about the poignant moments in my life where I was so looking and pointing the finger out, I didn't realize that these three were pointing right back at me. And that set me on a course to think very differently about how I deal with people, how I manage people, how I lead people, how I raise three little people at the time, how I engage with my wife, Lisa, how I kind of commit to being the type of person that I think I am when I'm at my best self much more often.
Mm-hmm. And it obviously gave you a starting point for all of these changes, but can you think of something tangible that you changed about the way you lived your life, or you managed your people, or the way that you were as a leader, you are as a leader? Can you pinpoint something that you changed immediately upon finishing that book?
Yes, I can. One thing is that we provide this book to everyone that comes to work, and we don't announce you as a new employee until you read it and send a note to me that says, here's what I learned, here's how this might impact me at work, and here's how that might impact me at home. That's the first thing. The second thing I focused on was what it feels like and looks like to start at a new company. I just never had thought through it. I'm not a person that generally spends a lot of time nervous, anxious, doubtful. I generally walk into new situations with such optimism and wide eyes and excitement. And this had me thinking differently, had me thinking about what it might feel like if somebody didn't have that type of DNA. And so I've spent quite a bit of time formulating, reformulating, and tweaking what onboarding feels like and looks like with the companies that I work with. I started at the NBA, and I took my first shot there. I got a little bit better at Madison Square Garden when I was there. And now the last years at HBSE, I think we've got a really good process to make sure that when you matriculate in from the 30 days before you start through the first 60 days when you're here, that you become part of this family much more quickly.
Mm-hmm. You said you give everyone in your organization a copy of the book, and you don't announce them as a new employee until they've basically proven that they've read it and told you what they got out of it and what they liked and what they didn't dislike. Why do you do that, and what are you looking for from them?
It sets the tone in terms of who we are and how we treat each other. By the way, there's usually one person a year that hasn't read it and tries to fake it with me, which I love. It's very, very inspiring. And I send a very sarcastic note back, ask them 3 or 4 questions that I know they could only answer if they read the book. And then they spiral into a very quick all-night read.
And a big apology, I guess.
It's
back to college, isn't it?
They're very, very big. Oftentimes they fake it and respond back 8 hours later with a lot of detail. But nonetheless, I'm sorry. What were you looking for there?
The question was, why do you do it? And you said because it sets the tone. And what are you looking? Is there a good response in those kind of when you ask them, let me know what you thought. Sure. What are you looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for what I receive oftentimes are very candid, look in the mirror. Here's where I'm struggling. Here's where my issues have been, and here's what my commitments are going forward type write-ups. You'd be surprised. The also thing is, we hire, 80 to 100 people a year. And so my opportunity, there aren't many opportunities where you come into an organization, we have about 2,000 people here, and you get to speak to the CEO one-on-one. And so I don't think that's lost on many people when they come in. And so they really spend time thinking about what message they want to spend, how they want to introduce themselves, what actually are they going to commit to and focus on. And then we have an exchange typically back and forth on a few emails or texts, which I love. So, but there's no magic bullet other than I would love people. The big takeaway, the big magic for me is I totally get it. I need to treat people like people every day and twice on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Something that comes through in reading just a small bit of this book, and the subtitle of it is Getting Out of the Box. And it strikes me when you talk to anyone, certainly at the Sixers organization, probably in HBSE as well, that idea of are you in the box or are you not in the box is something that comes through it, but people actually verbalize it and talk about it. And I've witnessed it on many occasions. Is it almost, kind of like a company handbook? This is the values of the organization are all in here.
One key element is, and the key element is making sure that you're literally walking through every situation, and it gives you the opportunity to treat people like people. I think that there are other aspects of the values that we teach and train in different ways. There are other aspects of the culture which we define as, what you tolerate and what you celebrate, that are very different. But that foundational core is there.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting style. I think this book is very readable. It's a lot of sort of first-person storytelling. It's almost like a textbook smuggled into a first-person storytelling type book, I think. And is there a particular style of any kind of book really that resonates best with you? What do you prefer to read?
I like stories. I love vulnerability. I think Bob Iger's book, Journey of a Lifetime, I think it was, or Ride of a Lifetime. Mm-hmm. I had the chance to watch a game with him in the bubble in Orlando. And the first thing I said was, boy, did I appreciate the vulnerability you shared in that book. Because I think, I look at Bob Iger from the outside and I just see this titan of industry, a master of everything. He's good looking, he's smart, he's successful, married Willow Bay, he's a power wife and power couple. And, and he talks about having a nervous breakdown or near nervous breakdown, walking in to find out if he was going to be the next CEO of Disney. I thought, man, even Bob Iger goes through some tough times. So I love vulnerability. Definitely love stories. I love exercises in the book. So I love when they challenge you at the end of each chapter to do something or act on something. Love quotes. They help break it up. I have a pretty undiagnosed version of ADHD. So for me, like short, like give me bite size and let me come in, come out. It's very helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. And how do you read? You mentioned that your wife gave you this book when you were at a low ebb, and you read it on a plane. Is that when you do you only read when you're at your lowest ebb, Scott? How do you like to read? Is it when you're traveling? Is there a particular time of day that you?
Unfortunately, now I need these. It's a little different these days.
Tell me about it.
But generally, I do most of my reading when I'm on vacation. I plow through books. I love to read. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I have usually 3 or 4 books on my nightstand, and I read like snippets of them. So I'll be reading multiple books at the same time, but sometimes don't get through them all. But love the notion. I've now, just given my job, many of us have this in our businesses, we've gotten to know some pretty incredible authors like Angie Duckworth and Adam Grant, and Chester Elton, and all these friends of mine now are successful authors. Kind of cool to read their new stuff. Again, advance on kind of the current and latest, the greatest thinking in the world. So that's fun as well.
Mm-hmm. And once you've read something and it's really resonated with you, what's your process for manifesting the insights that you've got from something you've read into your day-to-day? Do you write things down, or how do you do it?
Yeah, I take notes. I mean, if I don't write something down, I never look at it again if I write something down. But if I write something down, I oftentimes remember it much better. Kind of two-touch. The one area is if you work with me, you're getting articles and thoughts and books. I'll drop books in the mail and write little notes in the margins. I have a leadership development class that we run once a month for our top 100 or so executives. So there's a lot of time to talk through things I've learned, things I'm thinking about, things I'm questioning. I'm not a person who has the answers, all the answers, or in many cases, some of the answers. But I'm surrounded with myself with an organization and talented executives who are so intellectually curious and so driven to want to learn and get better, that we all have that same kind of mindset and DNA. And so for me, the blessing's been receiving those same articles and books from my colleagues.
That's an interesting insight into kind of a culture of learning and kind of constant evolution that you're fostering there. When it works the other way around and people are pushing stuff on you saying, hey, Scott, I enjoyed this, check this out. You know, there's only so much time in the day. How do you decide what you're going to turn your attention to in terms of reading material?
You know, I pretty much have a pretty good feel for a book when I pick it up, read the back jacket, and read the intro. And so it's either going to spark an interest or not for me personally. In terms of shorter content, podcasts, TED Talks, articles, I jump those pretty good. You know, I'm trying to optimize my time, and we only have so many hours in a day. I want to make sure that the time I spend is worthwhile.
Let's move on to your next book then. The Psychology of Money. Morgan Housel, I think, is the name of the
yes.
Housel. Is that how you pronounce his name? Timeless Lessons on Wealth, Greed, and Happiness. Quite the subtitle. When did you first read this one?
About 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
I've probably given out 100 copies, actually more, 200 copies since.
Okay.
Including to my 3 daughters who have been forced to read and report. I think it's one of the things, you know, having been grown up in a family of entrepreneurs who experienced, lower income. I don't want to call it wealth because there wasn't any, but in a tough environment to a family that went in and experienced country clubs to experience, then a group that lost it all, and my own personal experience of kind of doubling down on loans to go to grad school and then coming out and running a company to the ground and having like financial ruin and going to like a debt consolidator to try to like clean up my situation that I was struggling in. I don't want that to happen to anybody. I talked to a lot of our players, NBA players and NHL players, just about how important it is to make smart, prudent financial decisions, and how, you know, their wealth is generated at such a young age. They have such an incredible opportunity to build wealth over time because they have the X factor, which is time. And this is the one book that I've read that encapsulates all of the lessons and messages that you need to know, should know, could know about building wealth over time. It's a brilliant read. It's a short read. And I truly, truly cherish reading this book and sharing it with others.
Same question as for the first book. Was there an aha moment?
Yes, the aha moment was there's a chapter called "Don't Move the Goalposts," and I've struggled with that. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, when I started in this business, I was making $15,000 a year, living in an apartment with 6 other guys in a 3-bedroom, shuffling who slept on the couch. You know, so I imagine that the author was not thinking about not moving the goalposts from there. You know, because at that point I would have just said, hey, I want to have enough money just to eat lunch, you know? So, but I think as you get to a certain level of income, as you move up the chain and life gets better and you make more money, what typically happens to people is we buy a fancier car, or we upgrade our house, or we buy a second house, or we, you know, buy expensive jewelry or whatever, art. And I think what this book is saying is, you know, do your thing, like live your life, live a good, comfortable life, but don't keep keeping up with the Joneses. Just there's no joy in that. There's no win in that. There's no upside in that. But figure out the lifestyle you want to live now and how you can maintain that lifestyle for the next 50 years, and make sure that you're making the smart, prudent decisions to be able to have a wonderful, wonderful life when you retire.
Mm-hmm. It's a really useful point, I think, but one that sort of doesn't really chime with capitalist philosophy of, you know, always wanting slightly more than you have. You know, everything, marketing in capitalist society seems to be set up to make you want a slightly better car, a slightly bigger house, a slightly better holiday. You know. Yeah,
I'm not so sure, because I think the two can coexist, because. And they talk about this in the book, you know, wealth is not about how much you make, it's how much you save and invest. And so it's very much consistent with most capitalist principles. But you are right, like the marketing of you need more, you need better, buy this nicer watch and you'll be cool, buy this nicer car and you'll be happier, all that nonsense and noise. And when, as you get older, you start to figure out what you think is important in your 30s is not important in your 40s. What's important in your 40s is irrelevant in your 50s, and vice versa. So I think as you get older, I think those decisions become quicker and cleaner to make. And all I'm inviting young people to do when they're reading this is to think about it, because the advantage, money, I'm not breaking new ground here. Money doubles every 5 years. And so to the extent you can save money in your 30s, you might never have to work again in your 70s, depending on what you save. So I think there's an opportunity to transform a society, in particular in America. This is where we're at our worst. We're more things, and not more investment, savings, and planning. And I think we've got to transform the world and how we live it.
Mm-hmm. You only read it 6 months ago. You've already pushed it around to everyone you know. Have you changed anything tangible in your life and in your leadership as a result of reading it?
I'm really fortunate. I financially, I haven't seen my folks go bust as entrepreneurs. And then having had that experience at a really young age here in my late 20s, that's never been a problem of mine since. We're very disciplined. I live a wonderful life. Don't want for anything, but we have money that comes out of our paycheck every month, goes to our investments. So we've been pretty disciplined and prudent.
Very good. Right, on to the main course. We've had our double helping of starters. Now we're going to talk about Be Where Your Feet Are, 7 principles to keep you present, grounded, and thriving, by one Scott M. O'Neill. First of all, Scott, congratulations on getting it done and getting it out. That's the first rule of publishing, is get it done. Thriving, sure, I can see why you'd want to do that, but why present and grounded?
The world is chaotic. We're getting pulled in 100 different directions. In my house, anyway, my daughter's breakfast turns into a complete adventure every morning as they're getting ready for school. It could be a meltdown over a spilled milk or a borrowed shirt. So we're trying to survive in advance and get them out the door and into the car and get them off to school. And then, life happens. I'm working, they're at school, at the cheerleading and basketball and boyfriends and homework and all, Lord knows what else. And I'm working, I have games, I've got pressure. And I always think, like, how much time do we actually have together? Like a day. And if we can carve out 45 minutes a day to have meaningful conversations with our children, or our partner, or whoever else is in our life that matters to us, I think that'll keep us grounded. And why grounded? Well, I guess to me, grounded is about kind of finding your authentic self. And I think we're at our best when we find out who that is in here, and it helps us, I think, be a little bit more aware. Second reason is the world's hurting right now. We've been stuck in isolation. We've been alone. Our businesses are suffering. We're down. Pressure's up. Anxiety's up. Depression's up. All kinds of everything that's wrong in the world is up. And we have to be better. And I think as if you're listening to this or watching this, I'd encourage you, like when you're on a Zoom call, just notice who has their video off. Notice who the people you call, they have the voicemail box full. Notice your friend and she hasn't texted you back in a week. Like, there are people that need us right now. We need to reach out. We need to connect. We need to take care of each other. And so that's what this book is about. It just happens to be hitting at the perfect time because we need more connection. We need each other, and we need more life. And that's on us, and the only way you get there where you can help others and be aware is to take care of yourself first. And our simple formula we talk about at work quite a bit is do something for your mind, something for your body, and something for your soul every day. Get the right amount of sleep, which nobody does when they're young. And those of us that can't sleep, like me, who have all kinds of tricks of the trade, practice gratitude. Like if you do nothing else after listening to this book club, I just want you to send a text to your mom and tell her how much you love her, how much you appreciate her, and how much you learned from her. And if she sends you a text back that says, hon, what happened? What's wrong? You have not done it enough. So practice gratitude. And it doesn't have to be your mom if you don't have your mom. If your mom's not living or you're disconnected from your mom, find someone else in your life, a mentor, a teacher, a coach, a friend, a colleague, someone that works for you, someone that you work for. But like practice gratitude every day. Spend 60 seconds and send a note of gratitude. And then the third thing is be where your feet are. Put your phone down, get your head up. Stop walking into meetings and scrolling through Twitter. Like actually look around and say, how was your weekend? How are you doing? Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. What's up? What's new? Hey, your daughter scored a big goal. I saw it on Facebook. What's going on? That must have been incredible. Was that this weekend? How was that wedding you were going to? Hey, I heard you were at a restaurant last night, the new restaurant down the street. How'd it go? We're missing this because we're doing this. Have you been out to lunch recently or dinner and you're with your friends and they all have their phones out? And you're like, yo, I don't see my friends enough. I barely see my friends. I don't have time. So the time I have with them, I better put that phone down. How about your spouse, your partner? Like, I think we can do better. You know, my wife and I, when we're at our best, we're taking a walk a week. And we have what we call a non-transactional walk. And non-transactional means we're not talking about schedules. We're not talking about what we have to do with the kids. We're not talking about where we should be or have to be. We're actually talking to each other and listening to each other. And I think right now in the world, we just, you know, we need to be better. We need to do better, and we can get better.
Some really great points that you've raised there, and you mentioned authenticity of leadership earlier in the in your response to that, and I guess one reaches more towards their authentic self when they have these kind of grounded, present conversations. You know, these non-transactional conversations with whoever you live with. You know, that's heading to more authentically who you are. As a leader, though, how do you work out what your authentic leadership style is?
Right, that's a little more complicated of a question, in particular if you're young and how did you
work it out, Scott?
Right, for me, I became, you know, I've been a student of leadership. I was telling a friend of mine the other day. He was telling me he was a big fan of Dr. J when he was growing up, and I said I was a big fan of Jack Welch, and he started laughing. And I said, no, it wasn't that I didn't love Dr. J. Of course, I love Dr. J. He's one of the greatest players of all time. I love the Sixers. He was fun to watch. But I've been reading about leaders and leadership since I was a little boy. It's one of my passions in life. So I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about who I am and who I want to be. And when you're young, you know, you're either really, really fortunate or really, really unfortunate. And I happen to be fortunate. I worked for the great John Spolstra as a 22-year-old. I worked for Joe Banner as a 24-year-old. I mean, these are extraordinary. Seth Berger, who founded and won. Adam Silver, Bernie Mullen, David Stern. I mean, it's kind of insane. I mean, the list of people that I had the opportunity to learn from and work with. And there were some things that I did not like at all about every single one of those people. There was something I didn't like. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there was a lot more they didn't like about me, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But there were a lot of things that I fell in love with. There are a lot of things I learned. And when you're young, or even when you're old, I will say this, it's like, who are we as people? Well, we're a collection of our experiences. We're a collection of the people that we surround ourselves with. And we're part of who we aspire to be as people and leaders and managers. And so it's that, you know, that amalgamation of those three things that define who we are and who we become. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that, well, in the United States, I use the analogy of Bobby Knight. I don't think some of your international listeners will know who that is, but he was a coach who screamed and yelled and threatened and cursed. And I always sometimes say, like, not everybody can play for Bobby Knight, but some people can. And I would say about myself that I don't work well with the Bobby Knights. I don't want someone screaming in my face, you know, but I have friends of mine that operate really well with a little more assertive management. But if you're not a screamer and yeller, you shouldn't scream and yell. If you're not a hugger, you shouldn't hug. You know, if you're not a pusher or someone who sets the bar really high, you shouldn't be someone who does it. You have to find your center and then surround yourself with people who complement you, meaning that don't look like you in the mirror. And that's hard for us because we gravitate towards people who look like us, sound like us, act like us, and have the same philosophy. And it's actually the reverse. Because as a leader, if there's one thing I've learned for sure, it's that, people have to be managed individually and differently. And there is no one size fits all. And you have to be able to be a little bit more chameleon-like in your approach as a leader to optimize results than you used to have to 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. You've been on a sort of one-man whirlwind of promotion for the book since it came out on the 1st of June. I've seen you all over TV, Scott, being asked 2 questions about the playoffs and 1 question about the book, always very strict formula. What's the most common question that you've found that you're being asked about the book?
Most common question I believe is, what does "be where your feet are" mean?
Right.
Or how can you translate that to a person? And I just say, phone down, head up. That's the simplest way for you to think about it. When you're talking to your children, or you're talking to students, or you're talking to your colleagues, I think it's just about, simply being 100% present and connected where you are.
Mm-hmm. And what's the question that nobody asks, but you really wish they would?
What's my favorite story in the book?
Well,
the
next question I have here, Scott, is actually, what story is your favorite in the book?
It's an impossible question to answer because it literally depends on the mood I'm in or the time of day I'm in. There are stories about my own children in there that bring me to tears reading them. I mean, the introduction of the book is about my daughter, Kira, who's now 17, but was 11 at the time. And we were at a campsite, and for this group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, which is a global network of CEOs around the world. And a bunch of us were there with our preteen daughters, and the facilitator comes in and he says, okay. And we're separated. We just to the dads. And he said, okay, you've got 30 minutes. You're going to go for a walk with your daughter. It's the last time you'll ever see her. What are you going to tell her? And for me, at that point, I broke into a cold sweat, scribbled down some notes that were, unintelligible. But the big thought for me was like, how have I not had this conversation with my freaking daughter yet? And so it goes on in the book. I'll do the spoiler alert, but effectively, I managed to squeak out 3 things: family, family, family. You'll have friends. You think they're the most important people in the world. You'll have boyfriends. You'll have, people come in and out of your life, but there is nothing more important than family. So lean in, lean on. And the second thing is, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to crash your car, which you did. You are going to have a tough time. You're going to fail a test. You're not going to get in the school you want to get to. You're going to have a bad breakup. You're not going to get invited to prom. You'll get cut from a team. You'll miss the shot. All this stuff in life happens, and you're in the eye of your own storm, but everything's going to be okay. And then the third thing is anything, anytime. And that's a philosophy of mine I have with my friends and my family ever since. And that's simply like, whatever she needs from me, anything, anytime, call me, text me, FaceTime me. I am there for you. No questions asked, no judgment, only love. So that's a story that to me is like, it says so much about fatherhood, being a parent, the magical bond with daughters. But there's also like incredible application to friends, and incredible application to relationships and work. And it's like, why aren't we having these meaningful conversations right now? And I think COVID has offered up this awakening, and we can either take it or not take it. We can either, and it's been awful. People have died and people have suffered and business has been bad, but it's on us to create this new normal. And we have to decide to take the most special things that we learned and carry them forward. And I hope this book does it.
Mm-hmm. You've distilled these principles into these 7 principles into one book. Can you think of a particular episode in your life or in your recent career where when these principles have been a thing for you, you have already kind of had them in your mind, where it was a particular challenge that one of these principles or some of these principles actively helped you overcome?
Sure. Boy, the book is littered with stories from my career where I slipped and fell. Like this, the book is not a victory lap or let me put a crown on my head or let me pat myself on the back. It's simply times when I could have used all of these at one particular time. I tell a story, several stories about being at the NBA and not really getting it, like leaning in and battling and working and being so focused on being right that I lost my ability to be effective. And so, you know, that, and there are several principles that could apply there. One is API, which is assume positive intent, which means you just give people the benefit of the doubt. You give them a clean slate. You engage with them as if you don't have any baggage, you know, as you might with a sister or a teenage girl might with their mom, like all that crap that goes on there. I could have assumed positive intent. There's a chapter on the purple water buffalo, which is just being an extraordinary teammate. Again, at the NBA, I'm not sure that early in my career, I was there. Later in my career, I was the teammate. I was the buffalo. But early in the career, I wish somebody had grabbed me by the collar and said, "You're better than this. You know, this is not golf. This is basketball. So this isn't a solo sport. It's a team sport." Same place, another principle, WMI, what's most important. I didn't, you know, when I was running Teambo there, team marketing and business operations at the NBA, it took me a while to figure out what's most important in the business. One is you need relationships with the team presidents. They have to trust you and love you. Two, you have to advocate for them at the NBA league office. And three, you better be on team time and not league time. And it took me 2 years to figure that out. So all the principles are applicable at certain times in my career and plenty of times in my home.
It's no easy thing to write a book, and especially when, you know, you've barely got time to do anything outside of the whole book is about finding time to connect with what's important. So what did you learn about yourself in the process of writing it?
Well, you know, I learned I needed some help. I got a great writer to help me. So I wrote a book, you know, 300 pages. It's now much smaller, you know, tighter than that. And Michelle Bender, I hired to help me write, and she was magnificent. So I learned that. I learned a ton about the publishing business, which I didn't know much about, which has been a great, incredible education. St. Martin's Press published the book, and Tim Bartlett's the publisher and editor, brilliant, brilliant guy. I've made a whole host of new friends, which has been really, really interesting and fun. And I've loved the experience. It's been very enriching and rewarding. And it's not, you know, it's different. I put it out there. So if you read this book, you'll read about some times in my life that were dark, and you'll read about every mistake I ever made. And you'll read about what I learned, because that's what I think happens in life. That's why I think it's so important. And that's why this book mattered enough for me to actually write and go the distance to try to get it published. Was I think all the learning happens when you fail and fall. And we need to create environments as managers and leaders in the world where people are okay failing, they're okay falling. And that becomes something we celebrate, not just tolerate. And that we create environments for our teams to know that they can go out and swing away, and that we don't want environments where people are working hard just to keep their jobs. We want people to make these companies great. We want to continue to strive for growth and greatness. And that's what I'm striving for.
And if this book is sort of the experience of 30 years of failures and what they've taught you, I guess the sequel is about the next 30 years of failure.
No, I think I'm a one and done author. We'll see how this goes, but I've loved the experience. I've loved learning. I hope this is an opportunity for all of you that are listening. If any of you are going to write a book, please, please, please reach out to me. Get me on LinkedIn or Twitter or however else you're gonna track me down. But I would love to be a shepherd and help you through the process. It's worthwhile. If nothing else, if you can find time to write down some of the life lessons that you've had, it'll be something that if your downside is that your children and grandchildren will have something to read and remember the incredible lessons that you've learned along the way. I think it's a blessing worth the effort.
Mm-hmm. A nice way to end, Scott. But before you go, a final question. And I've heard you talk about the importance of holidays, actually taking vacation, and how it fits into your philosophy and these 7 principles. So the question is, where are you going on holiday next? And what are you reading when you're on holiday?
Great question. Well, I don't know if it's holiday. I'm going to Mozambique with my daughter, Kira. We're going for 2.5 weeks. We will be building houses and schools in a very tough area. And we're excited. We're going to do a little bit, I think it's 2-day tour, 2 weeks of work. So I'm pretty excited. I haven't been to Africa yet, and excited to go, excited to serve with her. It's a group called HEFY, H-E-F-Y, which is an incredible organization that sends youth around the world to help drive change and make the world a little bit better. So that's my next holiday.
And the book you'll be taking with you?
Man, I probably Think Again by Adam Grant.
A good recommendation. Scott O'Neill, Chief Executive, Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. Thank you very much indeed.
You're amazing. Appreciate the time.